Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And on this episode, we will be talking about the Indianapolis Colts. And I have with me the guy that knows the ins and outs of the Indianapolis Colts more than probably anybody else out there. That'd be Mr. Stephen Holder. What's going on, man?
I'm doing great. How are you, Mike?
Doing great. Now, we're going to get into the Indianapolis Colts. But, before I do all that, I do have to thank my sponsor. That is Manscaped, manscaped.com. Now, you get 20% off at Manscaped plus free shipping with the promo code ASC South. Again, 20% off at Manscaped plus free shipping with the promo code ASC South. Manscaped.com. Of course, you got a few days, maybe about a week till Christmas. Maybe you can get something in and get some shipping. Who knows? But, hey, that's my Christmas gift to everyone listening and watching. All right. And, of course, before we get into the Colts talk, I do have to always do the get off your chest segment. Now, it can be anything from sports, can be any division, but this division I'm going to go to is the NFC West. And in particular, I'm going to talk about Mr. Brock Purdy. Now, for those that are looking at the odds right now, Brock Purdy is listed as the odds-on favorite to win the MVP. Now, let me say that again. He's the odds-on favorite to win the MVP. Now, I know a lot of people are looking at that a little sideways, like, what is going on? How did this happen? Well, they're winning one, and look at his numbers. You can tell why. I mean, he's got, 26, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, I believe. I may be off a little bit, but anyway, he's the maestro of one of the most powerful offenses in the NFL. And so, I guess with the, with that success and things like that, of course, that's why he's there. But the flip side of that is the people saying, oh, he's got Debo, well, he's got Brandon Ayuk, well, he's got Christian McCaffrey. He's supposed to do that. Well, if you really want to go back, you can point out, Jimmy G, you can point out Nick Mullins, you can point out all these different little quarterbacks that played, but they didn't look as good as Brock Purdy in this system. Now, of course, the other thing is they're playing in front a lot. They're not playing from behind. And I get that, but, do you really just want to have little fun times and think about all those different things? He can't help it. He's on a good team and that they win games, to the victor goes the spoils. So, to me, hey, if he wins the MVP, he wins the MVP. It is what it is. Now, my choice, I probably would say either him or Christian McCaffrey on that team. It's probably a split vote, but, hey, I can't be mad at it if he does win the MVP just because he plays on a team that has weapons. I mean, every good team has weapons. Isn't like he's supposed to make just great things happen out of nothing and then win the MVP. I mean, you look around the league when people win MVPs, they definitely have a star player with them. A lot of times they're not just doing it by themselves. So, I had to kind of get that one off my chest a little bit. I mean, I know you might have something to add to that, Stephen. So go right ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that the MVP has kind of become not intentionally, but just by default, it's kind of become the best quarterback from the best team or the quarterback from the best team, right? I mean, Mahomes, if the Chiefs had 2 losses right now, we'd probably be talking about Patrick Mahomes, but they're in a little bit of a funk trying to find their way. So, that's subsided. Jalen Hurts and the Eagles have had some bumps. So that hasn't really had, the same kind of momentum as maybe in the past. And so I think the team with the least warts has been San Francisco, and the player at quarterback, the quarterback of a team like that is going to get a lot of credit. I mean, I don't know that there's anything inherently wrong with that. So I kind of agree with you. That doesn't mean there aren't players who are more valuable than Brock Purdy, but I do think just where we are today and what the recent history is with that award, it actually adds up that he could win it. So it'll be interesting, though. I mean, the last few weeks of the season, there's still a lot of things to be determined, particularly in the AFC, I think more than usual. So, we'll see. I mean, what if Tyreek Hill comes back and has, a spectacular finish? I don't anticipate that he wins it. I'm just throwing that out there as an example. McCaffrey, maybe he could do something historic in the last few weeks. I don't know, but we still have 3 critical weeks to go where I think a lot can change. But I do agree. There's a lot of momentum for Brock Purdy because he has played well, and he's on the best team, and that tends to be how it goes with MVP these days.
Definitely, and of course, like you mentioned, the quarterback award. That's why it basically is at this point. The offensive player of the year always is a wide receiver or a running back award. It's just how it goes these days. But of course, let's get into the subject matter at hand, which would be the Indianapolis Colts. Now, before we're going to get into the matchups and of course how the playoff picture is looking for them. But I definitely have to revisit the Steelers game, 30-13. Now, I will say I did not expect them to dominate like that, but they did. I mean, the Steelers did not score a point after it was about 14 minutes in the second quarter. They didn't score again the rest of the game. So what can you just say about just the domination of the defense for the Indianapolis Colts in that game?
Yeah, I really was impressed by it. I mean, I will start by saying this is not a knock on the Colts, but I will say, just to get it out there, the Steelers got some issues. Mike Tomlin has his hands full, man. That is a mess. Their record is actually, much less indicative of the type of team they are, from what I can tell. I mean, but you probably already knew that, so I don't think people need me to say that. But it got deeper, I thought, on Saturday night, because this is the low point, I think, of Mike Tomlin's entire tenure in Pittsburgh. I mean, I don't know that he's ever been here at this point. So, but let's talk about how they got there. They got there, frankly, because the Colts dominated them. And we've seen a couple things happen in this game. I think, number one, the Colts pass rush has been surprisingly good this year. They are, I believe, fourth in the league in sacks. They've consistently had a consistent pass rush on teams this year. So it's made life hard on quarterbacks. I mean, they've had some lapses here and there. A game like against the Saints where Derek Carr went crazy on them and had a huge day. But those have been the exception. And even Jake Browning against Cincinnati, Colts had a bad, really off week last week ahead of the Pittsburgh game. But I think those have been the exception. And what's interesting is they don't have a TJ Watt. They don't have, a really dominant edge player like that. But they are doing it really by committee. Their sack leader, Samson Ebukam, he has, I believe, 9.5 sacks, which is a good number, don't get me wrong. But, I mean, they don't have a 13, 14, 15 sack type of guy. So it's a group effort, and they have a lot of good rushers. Guys like someone who people in Nashville might know, Dayo Adengbo out of Vanderbilt. He's really broken out this year, and he's been healthy for the first time and really has showed. Guys like Kwity Paye, who was a first-round pick, starting to come into his own in his third year now. So it's really just a group effort, and even a veteran guy like Tyquan Lewis, who has been battling injury after injury the last few years, he has come on. So they're all doing it together in combination with the interior rush they get from DeForest Buckner, who has proven himself as an all-pro in this league. So I like the fact that they are showing you can do it in different ways. I think you'd love to have, that freak coming off the edge. Everybody wants a Bosa brother, right? Who wouldn't? But there's only two of those guys. I was going to say there's only one. There's two, but there's not enough to go around. So sometimes you got to create a pass rush, and the Colts also do it. This is interesting. They do it without blitzing. They are in the bottom 5 this year in blitz rate in terms of teams that blitz the fewest. It's just not really a part of their defensive scheme. That Gus Bradley just fundamentally just doesn't believe in it, doesn't do it. So they like to play coverage and get home with the 4-man rush. So they're doing that with a 4-man rush. So credit to them. And then I would say from a coverage standpoint, I got to give them credit. That has been a weakness of the defense this year, but they did step up. They did get some good contributions from Juju Brents, who's a rookie corner, Indianapolis native, but a second-round pick out of Kansas State. He has been in and out of the lineup all year. He's missed the past 5 games coming into the Pittsburgh game, but he got out there and got some good snaps, and I thought he made a difference in that game. And then, safety, the safeties have been solid this year. You saw Nick Cross, really putting his stamp on the game with an interception on a jump ball down the middle. So they're making plays and making the most of their opportunities and creating turnovers too. That's something they have had to do this year because they maybe aren't the most talented team in the NFL, but they're an opportunistic team on both sides of the ball. And that's how you get the most out of your group.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of, we're going to flip over to the other side of the ball. Offensively, first thing I want to ask is about Michael Pittman Jr. Of course, he had to exit the game, a hit by Kazee, defensive back for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who has now been suspended for the rest of the season. But, concussion, out for that game. Is there any kind of update on his status currently right now?
Well, the first thing is the hit looked very scary, so you worry about sort of the worst case scenario. All indications have been that, given what you saw, he's doing well, in spite of how violent that hit was. That doesn't mean he's going to play next week, though. He still has to go through the concussion protocol. Those were in the very early stages of those steps. The one maybe small silver lining is they had a Saturday game, so they're going to have 8 days in between games. So there might be some opportunity, to maybe squeeze out an extra day. That could be enough sometimes to get you cleared, when a player is right at the end of that clearing process, to be cleared to play. So we'll see. I think, 1 day doesn't sound like much, but it could make a big difference. So we'll see. I think by Wednesday we may have some indication if he's able to practice at all, on a limited basis. That would be a very big sign that it's heading in the right direction. But it's just too early to say. The good thing is that hopefully, at least, he didn't have to, get stretchered off, or there wasn't any hospitalization or anything like that. Because at first, when I saw him sort of just laying there, I'm thinking, oh boy, this game might have to stop for a little bit here. But he hopped up and ran off the field. So kudos to him, and glad to see that he's doing better.
Yeah, definitely. It was a scary hit. And like I mentioned, Kazee suspended for the rest of the year. One thing I will say is, I definitely played defensive back all the way through college. And I understand
it's a tough job right now.
Definitely a tough job. I understand wanting to make a play. But when they've repeatedly told you a certain thing, ultimately it's up to you to make those adjustments. He didn't make those adjustments, so hence here we go with him. I want to also touch on the running backs. Now, Zach Moss was the guy. Everybody was talking about him jumping in to replace Jonathan Taylor, and he was going to be the guy. He's one of the best backup running backs in football. He just to get 1,000 yards. Well, this game, he didn't have that happen. But you did have a couple guys step up, and Trey Sermon, who was a former 49er as well, and Tyler Goodson stepped up, and they made some things happen. What can you say about just those two? They combined for about 170, 180 yards between both of them.
I tell you why I love it. I mean, I think running back is one of those positions where you can discover a gem, just by accident sometimes. Nothing's by accident. Let me rephrase that, because they scouted these guys. They charted them through college. I mean, they know who they are. But you can kind of fall into a guy sometimes. I mean, the truth is they're on the roster, but they were hoping to never have to play them, right? I mean, you got Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. You're hoping you never get to number 3 and 4 in the depth chart. So here they are in a span of a few weeks. They lose Jonathan Taylor, and then they lose Zach Moss, at least for the time being. And you have to make do in the middle of a game at that. So I think a couple things happened. Those guys have been coached well, I can tell, because they got in there and there was no hesitation. They knew the plays, they knew the offense. They were able to read their blocks well. So I can tell that they have made the most of whatever snaps they have gotten in practice, because if they were not, sort of taking the practice snaps seriously and really studying because you're not going to get a ton of snaps when you're buried on the depth chart. So you got to
Right.
be in your playbook, and you got to be on top of things and not screw up, frankly. You got to do the pass protection as well, which is, huge, like a huge part of playing running back. If you don't do that, they won't put you out there. So anyway, in spite of all that, these guys were able to get out there and execute and then thrive on top of that. There's execute, and then there's the ability to actually produce. So they did both. And I think it says a lot about them. There's that moment of truth when you're a backup. And I talked to a couple of backups who had to go in that game and play. And I said, do you really know that you're ready? And they say, you think you're ready, you believe you're ready, but you got to prove it. And I appreciate that honesty because, look, lots of guys have failed at that moment. Lots of guys who have come before them had their opportunity and they fell on their face. So kudos to these guys for seeing it through and getting the job done. And look, they have put people on notice that they are there and they're players to watch in the future. Tyler Goodson in particular, by the way, I'll just say he has some juice. I would say, he has some speed. And then you look at Trey Sermon with him, he is a big, big guy. Like he has some size, he has length. He's a very rare body type at running back today. I don't want to use a Derrick Henry comparison because clearly he's never done anything that Derrick has done, but just physically, he reminds me of Derrick Henry, not as big, not as thick as Derrick, but definitely height from a height perspective, similar height and length. And I just thought it's a really interesting body type for a running back. Someone who I think, might make a difficult guy to tackle even in the open field.
Definitely. I was going to throw another guy out there, the same last name, but different person in terms of Chris Henry. I was going to say Chris Henry perhaps, but because he was a big guy that ran hard. Unfortunately, he just couldn't run to the open holes a lot. That's just when he was with the Titans. But it is what it is. And of course, I just want to ask, as we jump out of course, the last matchup to the playoff picture. Right now, the Colts are 7th in the playoff race. They're holding down that final spot. I got to ask you, did you expect that to happen? And how has it happened?
Absolutely not. No. I picked the Colts to win. I think my over-under was, I think I took the over. So I took 7. And they're at 8 wins now. I took 7 for the season. And let me tell you, I did not feel good about it. Okay. I just didn't want to say 6. I thought 5 or 6 was a little low because really the basis of my confidence was that this is going to sound funny now. The basis of my confidence was that I thought Anthony Richardson was going to be a really difficult player to defend and that they would win some games just by virtue of his playmaking, even if they weren't very good overall. So none of that even came into play because he played like 5 games. So throw that out the window. And if you would have told me that Richardson would have been hurt within the first 6 weeks of the season, what would the record have been then? I would have told you probably they win 5 games. Okay. So they built this entire offseason. Okay. Their entire offseason, they spent building an offense around Anthony Richardson. And then he was gone. And then somehow they lose 3 in a row earlier back in October. And then I'm thinking, okay, now it's really over. And somehow they pulled it together. They have won 5 out of 6, which is remarkable for a team with a backup quarterback. Granted, an experienced and accomplished backup quarterback. Gardner Minshew is not some kid who has never played, right? Let's be fair to Gardner Minshew. That being said, the league told him he's a backup. They had a chance to go out there and sign him as a starter this offseason, and no one was interested. He got a 1-year, $3 million contract from the Colts. That tells you are a backup. So to his credit, I'm not saying he did this like single-handedly. He didn't. And in fact, he had some bad plays this year that really hurt his team. But he has made some very critical plays this year that have allowed them to finish a handful of games that they might not have won otherwise. Even the Patriots game over in Germany, a very low-scoring game, but the Colts are backed up to their own end zone with a third down with a few minutes left in the game. And if they get a first down, they can run the clock out. If they don't, they got to punt. And the Patriots are getting the ball at midfield in a one-score game. Even with Mac Jones, you're thinking, okay, well, that's not good. So,
Right.
And Gardner made, I thought, one of his best plays of the season. He eluded 3 tacklers and rolls to his right, throws on the run, and hits Josh Downs for 38 yards, and they end the game. I mean, so he's pulled some rabbits out of a hat this year. And I'll tell you, we have seen a lot of backup quarterbacks this year, and a lot of them are terrible, absolutely awful. So in light of what you're seeing elsewhere in the NFL, I don't think we can credit Gardner Minshew too much. We cannot credit him too much because he has avoided the fate of those other backup quarterbacks. So that's the first thing. The other thing is, I mentioned the defense already. I think they have also gotten very much improved play from the offensive line. And you mentioned those running backs a minute ago. Those guys were also the beneficiary of elite offensive line play the other night. TJ Watt got him a few times early, and then they shut him down. It was over. They sort of settled in, and they controlled the line of scrimmage the entire game, the rest of the way. And that against the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that wants to come in and brawl with you and have a street fight, even if they're not good, the one thing they're going to give you is a street fight. They're going to be physical, dirty, not dirty like, playing dirty, but they want to dirty the game up, right? And you didn't see any of that. The Colts dominated the line of scrimmage. I was very impressed by that. So that is a big part of it as well. And then finally, I'll end it with this, as I think even maybe the biggest factor. We got to give Shane Steichen some credit. This guy, I didn't necessarily know a lot about him. I don't think anybody knew a lot about him when he got hired, but I knew enough people out there who I trust who told me, no, this guy is the real deal. So I had to trust it, and I had to say, okay, I believe it. But at the same time, he's not a miracle worker, right? So I figured it's
Right.
still going to be a tough year. But I would tell you, he has worked his magic, and he has done a great job. I don't think he'll win Coach of the Year necessarily, although he is a candidate. And I think he has a very strong resume for it. They won 4 games last year. They, in fact, after Jeff Saturday's hire, I believe they went 1-7 down the stretch. So that's the team now that he has in the playoff race and positioned with a pretty manageable schedule moving forward. He has a position to make the postseason. That's pretty remarkable. No disrespect to D'Amico Ryans and Stefanski. And look, there's some great candidates. I think if D'Amico Ryans wins Coach of the Year, you ain't going to hear me complain, or Kevin Stefanski, any of those guys. There's been some really good coaching jobs. But all I'm saying is that let's not overlook the job that Shane Steichen has done. He has instilled confidence in these players. That's why you can see a guy like Tyler Goodson get out there and act like he's been there before, even though he hadn't. These guys play with confidence. They play with competence as well. Mm-hmm. And that tells me that's a well-coached team.
Right. Definitely. It's been a pleasure to watch the Colts this year kind of evolve right before our eyes, minus the shimmying in the end zone from our guy there. But, it is fun. It's all entertainment. But, we're going to take a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Indianapolis Colts as they take on the Atlanta Falcons on tour in the AFC South with their host, Mike Patton.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back on tour in the AFC South, and another game to talk about, that would be the Indianapolis Colts as they take on the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Falcons have been an interesting bunch. They just recently lost to the Carolina Panthers in Carolina in the pouring rain with about maybe 10,000 fans there. But it was pretty bad to watch. They were selling tickets. They couldn't give them away, and the Panthers actually won the game. They couldn't give away tickets. But speaking of the Falcons, their team, they do have some talented offensive players. Now, I would say they probably don't get the ball as much as they should, but they definitely have some talented offensive players. One of those would be Bijan Robinson. Now, the running game is a focus for the Falcons. Not to say that Bijan Robinson is the main focus, which he probably should be, but that's another story for another day. But all their weapons and him can be dangerous if they're given the football. So what kind of challenge does that present for the Colts defense this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really does test you physically. There's no doubt about that. I mean, we're obviously all familiar with Arthur Smith, and we know what he's about. He's about, being physical. And I think, he certainly took that from Mike Vrabel, or at least Mike Vrabel sort of reinforced it in him, I guess. But anyway, they're going to test you physically, and, you're either going to wilt or you're going to stand up to it. I mean, I think I didn't see the Carolina-Atlanta game, but certainly I know that Carolina's defense is one that likes to be physical as well. They're probably underrated, because of their record as a unit. I know when the Colts played them, they gave them a handful defensively for sure. And they definitely put some hits on the Colts. I do recall that. So I think they know the kind of the similar disposition there. I think you're going to get a similar, not necessarily defensively, but just overall, that's the kind of team they want to be. But anyway, I think the Colts are well equipped to handle that. They've got Grover Stewart back now, who's their big nose tackle. He had been suspended for 6 games for a PEDs violation. That really hurt the Colts. I mean, their yards per rush allowed in the span that he was out, it jumped by an entire yard per rush. Now, I know, that might not sound like a lot to people, but I mean, over the course of a game, at 25, 30 carries, you're talking about a lot of extra yards. You're talking about a third and 1. That's the difference between converting a 3rd and 1 and not converting it, right? So they really struggled against the run without him, and they have had an instant turnaround with him. So not an accident. And I think they're going to sort of lean on that. And, and then that pass rush has got to, when they do, if they do stop the run, that's when your pass rush has to come through. And I think that's the formula, is shut that run down and then get them in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, make the young quarterback have to make some plays. And the Colts have, at least so far this year, they've had a relatively consistent effort with their pass rush. They don't always get there, but the pressure has been there. I would give them a lot of credit. So that is where I think their defense has made a big step this year. They've been good against the run for a long time. That's not new. Where I think they didn't have the complete formula was, can you get people in 2nd and 3rd and long and then do something about it? And in those passing situations, and now they are. So, it's also helped them survive this season with some really young corners. I mean, they are like absolutely devoid of experience at corner. Had they not had a legitimate pass rush this year, this would have been, I think, a very big disaster. So it all worked together. It was very timely that they got a pass rush going this year. And, look, that as you go down the stretch and you look to get to the playoffs, that pass rush is going to matter even more because you're going to see some top flight quarterbacks, presumably. So anyway, back to your original question. I mean, I think that's what they got to do is buckle the chin straps and go hit somebody. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely going to be fun to watch. I definitely love a physical game, and it's definitely something to watch. Of course, when you're successful stopping the run, of course that'll be pass game. And that'd be Mr. Desmond Ridder. Now, we talked about the pass rush, but Mr. Desmond Ridder has been judicious with handing out the football to the opposite team. He definitely did that when he was in the red zone against the Carolina Panthers, rolling out to his left, throws it, and he throws an interception at a crucial time in the game. So with him, is it more about containing him or more about just putting him in down in distances where he's not comfortable to kind of make that mistake?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you have this Colts defense, quarterbacks that have a tendency to turn it over, that works to their favor because they are, as I said earlier, I mean, they're near the top of the league in turnovers this year. I believe top 5 in interceptions as well. Just looking at it, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ritter's got, 10 interceptions, I think. So especially against 10 touchdowns. I mean, that's not the kind of ratio you want. So, yeah, that is you've got to be better than that. There's no doubt about it. I mean, his average at 7.1, per pass attempt, I can live with that. So, he's getting some production when he completes them, but the turnovers are a problem. And look, and as I said, you're getting a really opportunistic defense here in the Colts. So, he's going to watch the tape and be very conscious of that. And sometimes that can have an effect on a quarterback too. When you're, he's a big boy. So, I mean, I'm not suggesting that he's going to be afraid or anything or timid, but it can affect, speed you up, in the pocket. It can have you, kind of making quicker decisions, which can be a bad or a good thing. Depending on the kind of decision maker you are. So I think we'll see. I do think that he's probably watching this Colts tape with a lot in mind and taking that all into account, knowing that he'll be up against it this week. Excuse me.
Definitely. And, of course, I do have to mention that Arthur Smith did say that he has not named the starting quarterback. He said he may go with Desmond Ridder. He may go with Taylor Heineke. In my opinion, if he starts doing that, he's thinking Taylor Heineke and trying to find a reason to go back to Desmond Ridder. That's why I'm kind of gathering, but I don't know the answers, and we'll see on Sunday because he basically said it's a game time decision, which I don't know what that's supposed to do. I mean, it's supposed to make the Colts prepare for maybe 2 quarterbacks, but other than that, how does that really help your team?
Look, a wise man once said, if you got 2 quarterbacks, you got no quarterback.
That's correct.
I'm a firm believer in that.
That is absolutely correct. But defensively, I do have to talk about one guy that is a standout player for the Falcons. That would be Jesse Bates. Now, they brought him down from the Bengals, and he has done nothing but make plays for them. Now, they've added, other pieces as well, but he's the guy that pops off the screen as a playmaker. Now, I know there's certain things you can do with a safety because I played safety and corner. So I know there's certain things you can do with safeties and corners to kind of manipulate them and throw them off. What kind of things would you think they probably would have in mind for Jesse Bates this week to kind of make him think a little bit more on his feet back there?
Right. Well, first of all, let me start by saying Jesse Bates is, I think, one of the underrated players in the league. I mean, people who know who he is don't underrate him. I'm not saying that. Like we know, but I just think he's not a household name, I guess, is what I'm saying. Jesse Bates, I'm looking at it here. Jesse Bates, by the way, he's their leading tackler. Okay,
Yes.
that could be a bad thing, of course, because he's playing in the secondary. But it does tell you something about
Right.
him. That's a man who's willing to mix it up. But it's not coming at the expense of the other things that matter. I mean, he's got 5 interceptions, 9 pass deflections, and he's leading them in tackles. I mean, he's playing all 3 levels. I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, this is incredible. These are incredible numbers. And by the way, 73 of those 111 tackles are solos. So he is absolutely killing it. It's funny. I was in Cincinnati last week 14, or I don't know what week it is anymore. But
they're all running together now, right?
They do. I was in Cincinnati, and one of the things I heard from people there was that they really miss Jesse Bates. Their defense really misses him, and you have to agree. I mean, to have that athletic playmaker who can play sideline to sideline and all 3 levels. I mean, that's a game changer. So I mean, he's just a versatile defender. I mean, that's the Swiss Army knife that every defensive coordinator loves to have, and you just hope that they could put some players around a guy like that so he can see some success. I mean, he had to leave to get paid. That is the game. That sometimes is what it is. But you also want to win, and you want to be in a competitive situation. And he's a guy defensively. You can win with a guy like that if you build it right. So the Colts, look, don't test him. That's all I can tell you. Is just don't test this guy, because he will go get the football. But if you decide to run it, he'll come down and lay a hit on your running back too. So you can't avoid him, because he's going to make his presence known. I'm a big Jesse Bates fan personally.
Right. I definitely think he's going to be a guy that's going to make some plays. I think the biggest thing I would say, maybe kind of change his sight angles on different things, a little bit of motion, maybe kind of make him think a little bit more, because then he'll be maybe a step or so slow, and you can maybe fit something in behind him or in front of him, perhaps. That's the only things I can kind of think of to maybe slow him down.
Right.
But it's going to be a good game. The Falcons need this game. The Colts need this game. And it's going to be interesting to see who's going to come out on top. Now, we have reached the end of the show, but we haven't reached quite the end. There is a game at the end of the show. It's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. Could be on sports, could be on music, could be on anything. Are you ready?
I think I'm ready. Well, I guess I don't have a choice, so I'm gonna go for it. Let's go. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. First question I've got. Let's see. NBA Finals or Super Bowl? Which one would you like to cover the most, or did you like to cover the most?
Well, I've done both. I would say, it's interesting because I love basketball, and it's probably I don't know if it's my first love, but I played more basketball than football growing up. My football career was short-lived, like 1 season, short-lived. I realized. So I'm getting off subject now, but my mother wouldn't let me play, and by the time she did, it was too late. And I went out there in 11th grade, and they put me on kickoff, and I got blindsided by a fullback who actually went on to play college football. This man killed me. Okay, I still have his face mask mark right here on my shoulder. So thank you, Devon, for that. Anyway, so I love basketball, though, is what I'm saying. I was more of a basketball player, and I love the NBA Finals. I've covered multiple such series, but there is nothing that compares to the vibe of a Super Bowl. Nothing. I mean, as a reporter, you have to get there because of all the security and all the process. You got to get there like 4 or 5 hours early, right?
Yes,
and it allows you to just kind of sit there and take it all in. And I cover a game every week. I'm not even going to lie. Like, I take it for granted sometimes, right? And it's not a big deal to me necessarily. I still love it. Don't get me wrong. But like covering a game, all right, this coming game, I'll go down to the Mercedes-Benz Dome and we'll cover the game. And the following week, I'm probably not even going to be thinking about that anymore. But I vividly remember every Super Bowl I've covered. I remember moments. I remember where I sat. I remember sitting in Miami and watching Prince in the Rain do Purple Rain.
Wow.
At halftime. That's definitely a career highlight, by the way. So, I mean, those are moments that you just, you always remember even if you weren't at the game, like you remember where you were when you were watching that, that's the Super Bowl. And so I don't think anything tops it. And I would pick the Super Bowl for that reason.
Yeah, I definitely I did get to cover the Minneapolis Super Bowl. So yeah, I was freezing up there that one. But that was
there. That was a cold week, my
man. What goodness gracious. Look,
like,
and then
why?
You have people,
why were we there?
Right. You remember, I don't know if you remember, but walking out to the bus, they were busing us over to the Justin Timberlake press conference. I don't know if you went to that one, but we're walking by people and literally people are trying to talk to us while we're walking. And I just had my head down, acting like I did not hear them because it was too cold to be stopping and having a conversation outside.
No, I spent very little time outside that week.
All right, the next one, Derek Brooks or Warren Sapp. Which one would you say is the better one to actually maybe cover or watch?
Well, I actually covered Derek Brooks, strangely enough, having started my NFL career covering football in Tampa Bay. I got there the year after Warren Sapp had left, but I have had a lot of experience with Warren Sapp and dealing with him. And let me tell you, it's an experience. Let me tell you, I've had a couple of very intense conversations with Warren Sapp. Let's just put it that way. He definitely felt like he got the best of those. I'll give him that. I'm not going to argue with him because why would I do that? So Warren Sapp was one of one. I will say as a player, he was one of one. And off the field, frankly, he was one of one because, man, let me tell you, listen, all right, I got a Warren Sapp story. Screw it. Okay. So I'm not answering your question, and I will in a second, but I went to the University of Miami, and we overlapped for a couple of years at least. I went in the gym one day, the intramural gym, and, just guys going there and play pickup. And there's a group of guys playing, and I look, and I'm like, who is this big guy dunking all over the place? And I look closer, it's Warren Sapp, and he is dominating this game. And I hate to admit, I was on the wrong side of one of those Warren Sapp thunderous dunks. Just a ridiculous athlete for his size, man. You look at this guy, you think, this guy can't move. Don't make that mistake. So just a phenomenal athlete in every sense of the word, and a handful off the field in every sense of the word. Derek Brooks, I love Derek Brooks. I still talk to Derek Brooks. He is the salt of the earth. And from the full package, player in person, I take Derek Brooks, but don't tell Warren Sapp I said that.
All right. Now, since you said you did go to University of Miami, I did throw some Miami flavor into this one. All right, we're gonna talk about Trick Daddy. We got Take It to the House, or we got I'm a Thug. You got to pick one of those songs. Which one are you going with?
Take It to the House, because it's the perfect sports song too, right? It's multi-purpose. It's I'm trying to think. I believe they used to play it at Heat games, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, obviously, right? But it's a perfect football song for obvious reasons. I take that one all day long. It's the vibe. I like the vibe of that song better anyway. So definitely. That's a good one actually.
All right, now I've got a couple quarterbacks that have actually had their time in Indianapolis. Carson Wentz or Jacoby Brissett. You have to pick one quarterback to go for the whole season with. Which one are you taking?
So Jacoby Brissett, and here's why, because I think you're going to get more predictable outcomes with Jacoby. Now, Carson Wentz statistically had a good season in Indianapolis. The issue, as I found it, was that you didn't know what else he was going to throw in there. And
right,
you saw it against Tennessee, a left-handed interception. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. So Jacoby, Jacoby's not going to throw a lot of 40-yard bombs. Okay, it's just not his game. But he knows where to go with the ball. He is going to execute. he understands what he's being asked to do. He understands his limitations, and he plays within them. So, from a coaching perspective, what you're going to get. So I personally prefer that. And I think you get better overall outcomes because, frankly, if you look at the season that Carson Wentz had, despite his, acceptable statistics, it didn't necessarily always show up in the result. Like the result didn't always reflect that. Mm-hmm. So, by the end of that season, they were kind of playing in spite of the quarterback as opposed to through the quarterback, which is mind-blowing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, about as mind-blowing as a guy spraining both his ankles in one game. Yeah. Let's see. Now, final question. Nashville or Houston? Which is the better city to visit?
Oh, man. So the thing that makes this tough is that both are great food cities. Okay. So Nashville, in fact, that's probably the best thing about Nashville is that, I mean, they bring it. Like, you guys stepped up your game. I mean, I guess it's not a new thing, but I'm just saying, like, there's some top-notch restaurants in Nashville. Houston, I think, is great, particularly like for the barbecue and things like that, which I love. So that's tough. I would say that there's actually, funny enough, I mean, I'm past this stage of my life, but both have a huge party scene too. So. So they probably a wash there. I would say that Nashville probably has a more central entertainment district, whereas I go to Houston and I'm like, where am I? Okay, which ward am I in? Like third, second, fourth. What, I don't know the difference, but I'm like, the city's overwhelming. I have no idea where I am. I'm like, if you miss your exit, you're going to be driving for another 30 miles because you won't know how to get back there.
Goodness.
It's just, interchange after interchange after interchange. I mean, if they picked up Houston and put it in LA, you wouldn't notice the difference. Okay. In terms of highways, I'm like, what are we doing here? Anyway, that's obviously a guy who's gotten lost in Houston, but anyhow, Nashville, I feel like, okay, if you're trying to go see what's up and what's happening, you know where to go. And in Houston, like, you need direction, you need advice because it's just too big and too spread out. So, but a great city in both respects, though.
Definitely. Now, as far as Nashville, I will also say this. I didn't know if you knew this or not, but we have four HBCUs here. We have,
that's true. I didn't know it was four.
Tennessee State. We have Meharry Medical College. We have American Baptist College, and we also have Fisk University. So, and the thing also is that Fisk, Meharry, and Tennessee State are all on Jefferson Street. They're all So they're literally like mile from each other. They're all within a mile.
So that's like your version of the Atlanta University Center down in
Atlanta. Okay.
I guess, yeah. Theoretically.
Well, learned a little something today. But that's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. You are off the hot seat. I want to thank you for coming on, Mr. Stephen Holder, and giving us all great knowledge about the Indianapolis Colts. I want to give the floor to you. Tell everyone where they can find you on social media and all the things that you're working on.
Yeah, you can find me at Holder Stephen, and that's Stephen, as you see on the screen, with a PH. That's on Twitter. And I cover the Colts, but I also do a wider range of other stories for ESPN.com as well. So you can find coverage of everything from the Pro Bowl to stories that I'm working on about concussions in the NFL and just all kinds of surprising topics. Who knows what it will be next? So I love that part of the job too. So I get a little bit of bonus in addition to covering the Indianapolis Colts, which I like, the variety and what have you. So, so check me out on ESPN.com, on Twitter, and I'd love to hear from you guys.
Well, I definitely got to say it's been a pleasure talking to you. Definitely didn't know the other parts there. I would expect maybe a I'm sorry, not Tyler Halliburton. Good gracious. Did I really just say that? I would expect the Halliburton story, maybe him lining up a watch. I'm just joking. I'm just really joking. But I just want to
I'm
thank you
definitely
again for
watching
coming
him
on.
though, just to be
Oh,
clear.
yeah.
Like, he is fun. He is fun.
Definitely is. I mean, of course, you're trying to figure out how he's still not in Sacramento and how they couldn't make that work. But anyway, Sacramento is still successful, and Indianapolis is definitely thankful for having him. But thank everyone. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Of course, you can find me on Twitter at. I'm sorry, the artist formerly known as Twitter. That's what I like to call it over here. To kind of give an ode to Prince. By the way, Prince connection. But the artist formerly known as Twitter at Mike Patton 82. That's MikePatton 82. You can find me on Threads, and you can find me on Instagram at that's THA, not THE _general_MP. Of course, you can find Touring the AFC South on YouTube and all your listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, you name it, we are there. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Touring the AFC South. We're out. Peace.